Let's take a walk through the wilderness. In Hebrew, the name of the book of Numbers is Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness. It tells the story of the amazing trip that lasted 38 years from when the law was given at Mount Sinai to the day before the long awaited conquest of the land of Canaan began. In this amazing story, Israel's wins and failures during their wilderness period are shown. It's a deep story about how human decisions can hinder progress and keep us from moving forward. It only took days to free Israel from Egypt, but it took an incredible 40 years for the Israelites to release Egypt from their hearts and their minds. To understand the book of Numbers, it's important to take a look at the last few chapters of Exodus. As we move on to the book of Numbers, we start to think about how the book of Exodus ends. For those of us who have read the Bible before, it's normal to wonder what comes next. This story of history continues in Numbers, which starts just 1 month after the events in Exodus. About a year had passed since the Israelites had left Egypt. It shows what happened during that last 38 years of their time in the desert. When we first look at the book of Numbers, we might have a lot of questions. Why does this book have the title Numbers? Why does it even matter? And what does this book cover? The English name Numbers comes from the Septuagint, which is based on the two military censuses described in chapters 1 and 26. Yet the Hebrew name for this book is Bamidbar, which actually means in the wilderness, which happens to be the best description of where most of this book takes place, in the large area that goes from the wilderness of Sinai to the dry plains of Moab, which are just across from the Jordan River from Jericho. But the first chapter of the book of Numbers contains one of the most profound revelations in the entire Old Testament. The title Numbers tells us what it's all about. Every number and detail in this text carefully thought out and put there by our phenomenal God. As we read this first chapter, we come across some numbers that stand out. To the east of the tabernacle, Judah had 74,600 people. Issachar had 54,500 people, and Zebulun had 57,400 people, for a total of 186,400 people. Reuben had 46,500 people. Simeon had 59,300 people, and Gad had 45,650 people, for a total of 151,450 people in the camp of Reuben, which was at the south of the tabernacle. To the west of the tabernacle, Ephraim had 40,500 people. Manasseh had 32,200 people, and Benjamin had 35,400 people, for a total of 108,200 people. Last, Dan had 62,700 people, Asher had 41,500 people, and Naphtali had 53,400, for a total of 157,600 people to the north of the tabernacle. Now, take out a piece of paper and draw a square in the middle to represent the tabernacle. Using only the cardinal directions of north, south, east, and west, make a bar graph that goes out from the center and is proportional to how big each camp would have been. No bar should be wider than the tabernacle in the center itself. This activity will help us to see the meaning behind these numbers, the holy ordering, and the meticulous detail of our God. Pause the video, reflect, and talk about what you discover. What profound revelation did you find in this seemingly mundane counting and arranging of tribes found in the first chapter of Numbers? Did your drawing lead you to something like this? Think about it. This is the book of Numbers in the Old Testament. How can these numbers and arrangements of the tribes explicitly reveal the cross that won't show up for about 1,500 more years? This Bible that we read could only have been written by God. No way man could have ever even fathomed such an idea. As we start our journey through the book of Numbers, we will not only learn about numbers, but also about faith, compliance, and how God is always faithful, even when people make mistakes. It is a story that shows us how to walk with God through the desert of life, trusting in his plan no matter how well or how badly things go. So let's start this journey. Are you ready to find even more spiritual treasures and timeless knowledge hidden in the pages of Numbers?